Hello, I am going to teach you how to do this 5-color granny square. This is just a simple granny square, basic, using 5 colors. And this is how I crocheted this up for my granny square pillow pattern. The yarn that I'm using is this Wander acrylic yarn from Furls Crochet. It's 100% acrylic. It's really soft, kind of reminds me of Karen Simply Soft. 100% acrylic, worsted weight yarn. And I don't know, Furls sent me this yarn for their Crochet Foundry blog hop. The pattern that I'm using for the blog hop is the pillow pattern, and I am making a bunch of these squares for the granny square pillow that I'm going to have in the blog hop. The 5 colors that I used here are Meadow. This green one's called Meadow. And then Mist, Thatch, Snow, and then this one is called Midnight. So the reason why I have these 5 colors is because there is a palette pack. All 5 of these came together at a discounted price, and this is the Terra palette pack. I'm not sure if they still have this palette pack after I chose these colors. They said that a bunch of their palettes were going to be discontinued. So if you like all these colors, you can still get them. And a lot of times if you order 5 skeins, and you can have a little discount. So without further ado, let's learn how to make this 5-colored granny square. So first, I'm going to take the color that I'm going to use in the center, this green one. Let's get these other ones out of the way so it doesn't get in my way. Okay, and there are several ways to start your granny square, but I am going to make a slip knot. And then the hook that I'm using is a size J hook, and this is a Furls Crochet hook. This is an Odyssey in white and nickel. I really like this. The top of this is nickel, and the way that the yarn moves across is really nice. So again, Furl sent me this hook for the blog hop for my patterns. So I do like it, and I have purchased other Furls hooks using my own money. So I do recommend Furls Crochet hooks. Okay, so you make your slip knot, put in your hook, and then you're going to chain 4. So this is one way to start it. Okay, and then in this very first chain that I made, I'm going to do 2 double crochets. Okay, then I'm going to chain 1 and do 3 double crochets in that same hole. And we're going to work all of this green color into that first chain. Okay, so that first chain 4, that counted as a double crochet. And then I chained 1, and I did 3 double crochets. Sorry. So my original chain 4 counted as 1 double crochet, and then I did 2, 3 double crochets. And I chained 1 and did 3 double crochets. I'm going to do that for a total of 4 times. So I'm going to chain 1 and do 3 double crochets. So that's 2. Okay, then I'm going to chain 1 and do 1 last bit, 3 double crochets. So these double crochets, chain 1, that's what we call the granny stitch. Okay, so you're doing 4 granny stitches, and then we're gonna, after our last one, we're gonna chain 1, and we are going to slip stitch to your first one. And then what I do, just to make my colors secure, is I'm going to fasten off You could change colors here and then start again, but what I'm going to do is just fasten off because then I feel like it's just a bit more secure later. I read a tip somewhere that if you flip it and you start going this way, your granny squares will just look even, more put together, more square and even. So I flipped it, and now I'm gonna put my crochet hook in one of the chain one spaces, and then I'm switching colors. So I'm gonna grab my gray here and switch to gray. So I am going to that in chain one, and then we're actually going to chain three. Then I'm going to do another double crochet. So I'm just going to do part of the first granny stitch here, and I'm going to finish off later. Some people do all three of the stitches here, but I'm just going to do two and move on, okay? It's just going to look better later on. So then I'm going to chain one, and then still in that same chain one space, I'm going to do another granny stitch. So 3 double crochets. And then chain one again. So the granny stitch, remember, is 3 double crochets in the same stitch and then chain one. Okay, so then in every chain one space, we are going to do 2 granny stitches, which, like I said, is 3 double crochets and a chain one. What am I doing? I'm doing a cluster stitch. Don't do a cluster stitch, do a granny stitch. Okay, let's start that one again. I am so sorry. So in every chain one space, we are doing a granny stitch, which is 3 double crochets into chain one. Chain one. Okay, so that's 1 granny stitch in that chain one space. So now I'm doing the second one, which is 3 double crochets and chain one. 3, chain one. Okay, so then find my next chain one space. Some people do a chain 2 space, but because my crochet hook is so big, oh, sorry, I'm doing a cluster stitch once again. I just made a cluster stitch blanket, so that's what's fresh on my mind. Granny stitch. Because my crochet hook is a J, it's a little bit big for this yarn. I'm doing a chain 1 space instead of a chain 2 space. So chain 1, I'm going to do another granny stitch here. Okay, chain 1, we're going to do 3 double crochets once again. And you see in these corners, stop, in these corners, we've made corners, obviously. It's starting to look like a square. See this yarn sometimes, similar to Karen Simply Soft, it splits a bit. Then here, we're at our last one. I'm going to chain 1. Remember, I only have 2 double crochets here. So I'm going to go over here and add 1 more. And then I'm going to slip stitch to here. For some reason, I just think that makes my granny square look, my granny stitch look a little bit better. scissors and fasten off. And then I'm going to flip and start at a different part of my square. I'm going to start in one of these chain 1 spaces once again. Go to my third color, this brown. And this is how I fasten on. Maybe you have a different way. But I'm going to chain 3. You could do a standing double crochet. That would work too. Okay. So here for our third round and for every other round, this is how it would work. Oops, sorry, I hit my camera. Along the sides, you're going to do 1 granny square per chain 1 space, but in each corner, you're going to work 2 granny squares, or 2 granny stitches in each corner. Okay? Does that make sense? So this is what our gray looks like. And in each corner here, we had 2 granny stitches in each corner. Now for every one, we're gonna have, for every round now, along the sides, each chain 1 space gets 1 granny stitch. But each corner gets 2 granny stitches here, okay? And then you'll notice in round 4, still each chain 1 space has its own granny stitch, and then each corner has 2. And you can see again with the blue along the sides, each chain 1 has its granny stitch, and then each corner has 2 granny stitches. So that's how I'm going to work this up. So I'm going to do just half of my granny stitch here. So 2 double crochets, chain 1, and then 3 double crochets and chain 1. And once I get back to my starting point, I will finish off that first granny stitch. I just find it makes the stitches cleaner. Instead of making your whole granny stitch and then chaining 1 and joining that with a slip stitch, I just think it works best to do that. Just a little tip I have. What tips do you have for making granny squares? If you have any tips, let me know. Maybe this super soft yarn and this nickel hook, it's just too soft, it just glides right off. Okay, so then in my corner, I'm going to do 2 granny stitches, 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets, chain 1. Each corner gets 2 granny stitches. And then along the sides, each chain 1 space gets 1 granny stitch. Oops. Okay, I am about ready to join my third round. So I did my granny's stitch, chain 1, and then remember in this cluster here, I only have 2 double crochets. So I'm going to do 1 more double crochet and then just slip stitch to the top here to join. See, it looks pretty good. And then we fasten off. I'm going to flip it and start in a different spot. I'm going to start right here. Grab the white, my 4th color for my 4th round. Get twisted up. Okay, so I chained 3, I did another double crochet, chain 1. Okay, remember in this 4th round, really every round, along the sides, every chain 1 space gets a granny stitch, and then every corner gets 2 granny stitches. So I'm gonna chain, I did my chain 1, now in this chain 1 space, I'm going to do granny stitch, 3 double crochets, chain 1, and then I'm in the corner. So in every corner, do 2 granny stitches. If you have any questions, leave it below in the comments, and I would love to answer any questions that you have. But really, I'm just going to finish this off by working 2 granny stitches in every corner, and along the sides, 1 granny stitch per chain 1 space. So I'm going to do that for the white, and then I'm going to finish off, bind off, cast off, fasten off, whatever you want to say, and turn my work, and then I'm going to use my blue. And that is how I'm going to get this 5 color granny square. Okay, thank you so much for watching my video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. If you liked my tutorial, please give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and click that little bell button so that you get notified whenever I post a new stitch tutorial or other yarn crochet related content. Okay, bye guys.